church itself has helped me grow. Just getting rid of old friends, making new friends in the church, volunteering at the church, and going on my first missions trip to Panama really changed my life. It was life-changing for me. In fact, I wouldn't be giving my testimony if it wasn't.
On your march. Set.
Growing up in my household was like growing up in a house where there was light and darkness in the home, meaning that I had decisions to make. Some were good, some were bad. No household is perfect, but I went through a lot as a young girl growing up and trying to find my own voice. There was alcoholism and drugs and just abuse that I experienced. And that began to frame my thinking and how I looked at other people. And growing up for me, my outlet was running. I loved to run. Seeing what I saw in my household with the abuse and everything, track and field became a love for me. And it was an outlet for me because I didn't have anyone to communicate with about the anger that I was housing on the inside. I was actually able to receive a college scholarship. And in that college scholarship, I wasn't prepared to handle college on my own mentally. I did everything my mother prayed I wouldn't do. I mean, I was drinking, I was smoking, I was partying, while still going to track practice, while still competing. I had that darkness on the inside of me. My sophomore year, I met a guy. It was like everything that I dreamed about was done. And, my roommate and I, we began to discuss abortion. Should I get an abortion? I had all these dreams to become a track athlete, a superstar, to be in the Olympics, and I was doing so good, and I can't have a baby now. And when I went back home, I didn't know that my family would rally around me and support me in the pregnancy, and I made up my decision to not get the abortion, but to just move forward with the pregnancy. And I didn't know what that would mean for me. So I decided in that moment I was going to hang up my track shoes for life and run this new race. When I was at home, I began to experience these excruciating pains in my left shoulder. I didn't understand why it was so painful. And my mother began to tell me to watch this Christian television show. And I was so mad at God. I was upset at God. And I'll never forget it. It was literally almost midnight. And I was thinking about taking my life and my unborn baby's life at that time. My mother and father were in their bed asleep. And it's like something on the inside of me said, turn on the Christian television that your mom was telling you to watch. I turned on the Christian television show. I'm telling you, there was a guy in a white suit, and he said, there is somebody who was watching me who has excruciating pain in your left shoulder. He said, if you believe God, he can heal you. In an instant, I took my right arm to raise my left arm, and I said, God, if you heal me, I promise I will live my life for you. And instantaneously, I felt like a tingle go through my fingers, and the pain lifted. And I screamed, and I said, Mom, I screamed, and she came out of the bedroom. And in that moment, at 19 and pregnant, broken, suicidal, God let me know I am real, I am Jesus Christ, I am your healer, and I want to do relationship with you. 20 years later, he has continued to prove to me that he is the great I am. And he took me from a broken teen mom to the woman that I am today. And my sons are now 23 and 20, and I'm proud of who I am today and who he's going to continue to make me to be. If Christ is for you, it doesn't matter who's against you. You just have to wake up every single day, treat it like a gift that it is, and ask God to take you by grace from one day to the next day and continue to perfect his character in your brokenness. That's my story.
There were some things that happened in my life that just kind of left me really wounded and hurt and confused and lost, and I didn't really know how to process through it mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and so I found myself in 8th grade just struggling through suicidal thoughts and just not really knowing what to do with that. And then it was in 9th grade that I actually gave my life to the Lord, and a lot of that, I was able to release a lot of that to Him, but just went throughout high school and college and kind of suppressing some woundings that had happened in my life and some feelings. And so it was about 2 years ago when I just really found myself in a really low place and really began dealing with a lot of anxiety. I was having these panic attacks where I just didn't know how to deal with things emotionally, and so I found myself just not being able to breathe, and my thoughts were racing, and I was sweating, and I couldn't, and I had my kids in the other room, and I just didn't know what to do, and so I knew something was wrong. I just really felt like I was alone in my struggle, and so I didn't really reach out for help. I just kind of kept it to myself and to my husband, and about 4 months into it, I found out I was pregnant, and we were really excited, but we also had a lot of fear. In all of this, I reached a breaking point where I needed help. There was this one day when my husband came home, and I had been laying in my bed pretty much all day. We realized that we needed to bring it into the light, and so he reached out to a friend, and a friend suggested a counselor for us that was in Minneapolis, and I found myself a lot of times going back to when I was in 7th and 8th grade of how I dealt with pain and how I dealt with emotion. And I remember there were moments when I'd be sitting in my bathroom, and I was 6 months pregnant, and I was having suicidal thoughts. I just felt like the only way out of this pain and these emotions and what I'm thinking is just to not be here anymore. And I just remember, in my mind, I just was like, I cannot do this anymore. I can't go through with this. And I met with a counselor for months, and it was about a year after I started feeling these intense emotions of anxiety and depression that I had our son, and everything shifted for us. We knew that God had fought our battle for us and that He was with us every single step of the way. And He doesn't leave us there, but that He restores and He redeems the broken parts of us so that we can extend that to other people in the body of Christ. And so it's a beautiful picture. You don't have to feel shame, guilt, or the weight of it. God has a future for you, and it does matter if you show up, that you're significant and that you are chosen and called.
You know, everyone was saying God was good, but really and truly, I hated God. I was working in a church. I'm a pastor. I teach young girls, and He took everything away. This entire journey began back when I was pregnant with my second son, Talon. I had started to develop these infections, just bronchitis here, pneumonia there, like, it's a big deal, but it wasn't like anything super crazy. But after my second son, my body really started to disintegrate. Just every organ was starting to fail. My hair was falling out. My teeth were breaking. I mean, just everything in my body was failing. And in 2013, things were going really well for us. I mean, I was still sick, but like, it was good. I had taken my kids down to Las Vegas, where Josh was stationed at that point, and I just took a step, and my left leg buckled out from underneath me, and I hit the floor. I went into shock. I had no idea what was happening. I couldn't control anything. Realized that something was wrong. Somehow I managed to get my kids into the car, drove about 5 miles down the road to the military hospital, and then passed out in the parking lot of the hospital. I don't remember any of those things. Cohen was 6 at that time, and he ran into the hospital. Cohen's my oldest. He ran into the hospital and got help for us. They rushed me in to an MRI and a CT. They found that I had a tumor. It had wrapped around my spinal cord, and when they removed it, they nicked my spine. So 3 surgeries later, I still couldn't move. And that's when they started using the word paralysis. I felt like a burden to everyone around me. I just didn't want to live that way. And so 1 pain pill would turn into 3, and 3 would turn into 5. I would take extra of everything, hoping that one day I just wouldn't wake up. And that was really hard because I love my kids and I loved my husband, but it just wasn't supposed to be that way. Life wasn't supposed to be this hard, and I wasn't supposed to sit in a chair. Sorry. I wrote letters to my kids because I wanted them to know how much I loved them. And I would pray to God that He would just let me go to sleep and let me be in heaven, because I believed that I would be healed, but I didn't think it would be here. We would go to church on Sunday and I would pray over people and I would put on the face, and then I would go home and I would take double the amount or triple the amount of meds that I was supposed to take, praying to God that I would never have to do that again. You know, you read about these stories in the Bible and you believe that they happened, but you don't really believe that they happen. I had some friends start really pressing in and praying for healing, and one of them said to me, "Do you even believe it's possible?" That stuff doesn't happen anymore. So this group of men and women, they just started praying for me even though I was really resistant. You know, it was powerful, but at the same time it was very cynical, even to the point of going, "God, I really hope that you just will help them feel better about this and help them accept it." Even as they're praying for me to be healed, I'm praying that God would help them accept reality. And the next thing I know, my entire body felt like it was on fire. And I started shaking uncontrollably, and I opened my eyes and I was standing up. And there was a woman in front of me who put my hands in hers and said, "I want you to walk." And I started to take a step, and it was really shaky. About an hour later, we left, and I pushed my wheelchair out of the building. And that next year and a half to 2 years, God healed the inside of me to match the healing He had already done on the outside. I never have had to use the wheelchair again. But He has broken off depression and suicide, and He has broken off unbelief, and has given me a platform to be able to speak and pour into other people who are in a place of hopelessness. But that was a 4-year process that I'm just now at the point of feeling like, okay, God, I'm ready to speak.
A little over 18 years ago, God really placed a dream in my heart for international adoption, specifically to China. And I remember at 21 years old, really feeling like God impressed upon my heart that this was something that was going to be part of my future.
So it was in the fall of 2015 when we contacted our agency for adoption, and to kind of say, hey, we're ready to take our next steps. There's always going to be 2 steps forward, and sometimes you feel like you're taking 3 steps back. And that was definitely our situation as well. About 6 months into our process, our home state agency decided to shut their offices in Wisconsin and move out of the state completely, which left us hanging, being halfway through our process and having to find a new agency.
Anytime God calls you to something, most of the times it's always bigger than yourself. And we just had a moment in our process where we felt that. And I remember sitting at the kitchen counter quite like this and just feeling the heaviness of this process, the calling of this journey. And Avery, who was sitting at the kitchen table, gets up and she says, "Mom, can I tell you something that God just told me about Levi?" And of course I said, "Sure," thinking she's gonna say something cute or sweet. And she goes, God just showed me Levi, and he showed me that he's protecting." And she kind of crouched down on the floor. And she said, "There's all these people who would maybe want to come and get him, but that God is saving him just for our family, and he's protected until we get there." And, I'm looking at my 5-year-old girl's little face, and I'm starting to cry as she's telling me the story. It was so beautiful that God chose that moment. He chose my little girl, 5 years old, to speak to me.
So it wasn't until March of 2018 we got the first referral from our adoption agency, which was Levi's file. And we got to see the first pictures of him and read more about his history and his story.
He had 4 areas of special needs. 1 was anemia, 2 was a speech delay, 3 was developmental delays, and 4, trouble walking.
So after we accepted Levi and wanted him to be part of our forever family, we started our planning process to go to China.
The day that we were united with Levi was probably a day we will never ever forget. It was just amazing.
Oh, Jason, Becky. I knew it was And Jason's like, I don't know.
And it was just beautiful. Seeing his face for the first time was just the most amazing feeling. And as a mom, you love your children instantly from the moment you hold them when they're birthed. They're just your world. They're everything. And here was Levi, an 18-year-old dream, and he was right in front of me. And it's an experience that I will never ever forget. We've been home around 5 months now, and Levi is such a joy to our family. He probably is the best gift that we have ever been given. Levi had his first medical appointment in August, and the doctor has cleared him of all 4 special needs. No anemia, no speech delay, developmental delays, and the little boy who was barely walking is now running around my house, and literally running. He doesn't walk very many places, he runs. Kisses to the camera. Kisses.
When I was around 11, my grandpa, they had actually just moved here to come on staff with Dan. And he was diagnosed with colon cancer. And when June 6, 1997 rolled around and God chose to take him home, I remember I dealt with a lot of anxiety starting around that time. And I know my mom and dad recognized that. And it was around probably the same age that I lost my grandfather at 13 that a neighbor girl who was a friend of mine ended up molesting me. There was a lot of years I held on to that. And I was 16 when another thing happened that was pretty significant. A man in our church had asked all of my friends and our parents, if him and his wife could take us up north to their cabin. And it was actually him alone that brought us up to this cabin. And it was there that he molested me and the 3 other girls that were with me. That was a big part in my childhood that it definitely affected my trust or my faith in men.
We began to notice some things beginning to happen in her life. Just a little bit of, felt like she was moving a little bit away from us as we got further into her senior year. We started to recognize that there was some changes happening that we didn't understand for sure. When she was in college, we started noticing probably her second year of college, a bigger change in her where she seemed to be kind of pulling away from the family more. And she became involved with, she had a roommate. So then in January 1st of 2009, I had just decided I wanted to really know what was going on, and I really wanted to. I just couldn't be separated from my daughter anymore. I just wanted that closeness back with her. I wanted that intimacy that we had always had as mom and daughter.
Today's the day. I'm going to tell her. I just knew she was going to ask, and I knew that that was it. And so I came home, and sure enough, she asked, and I admitted everything.
As Kristen went home that night, Tim and I, looked at each other and just said, all I know is this. We are not going to alienate her. We're not going to shut her out of our lives or her partner. We are going to love her the way the Lord would love her, because we love her and we just can't do this. And we knew our daughter. Kristen was the kind of person that she's got a very tender and sensitive heart, and we knew that if we were to try this tough love thing and pushing her away and telling her she couldn't do this and couldn't do that, we knew that that wouldn't work well and we might lose her forever. So our thought was, let's try to just be Christ-like in this and love her through this process.
And I remember hearing that for the first time and saying, wow, that's going to change a lot for my sister and Tim and their family. It's going to change our relationship a little bit if she starts bringing another gal to Thanksgiving or Christmas. How are we going to deal with that? And we did get to know a gal that she was with and tried to show grace and love, tried to open our arms to say, you're a person that's important to Kristen. We will care about you and love you like we would anybody else. And yet there was that inside battle, because for my whole life, I believe that you don't go down that path. So I know that there's that battle that goes on for all of us. I had made a decision with Kristen that I was going to love her regardless and make sure she was still a part of our life, even if I didn't agree with everything she did.
It was through the time I was engaged to my partner at the time, and we had a long engagement because I wasn't 100%. Like I said, I was wrestling, all throughout. And so we never set a date. And it wasn't until December of 2015, it was Christmas, and I was home with my parents. And I was so tired of the wrestling, so tired of the back and forth, that I just said, we set a date.
And I had to make some decisions about if that happens and if there's going to be a date that's set, a ceremony that happens that I won't be a part of, will I attend that? But I made a decision a long time ago that I would be a part of that day. I would come, and whether it looked like I was endorsing it or not, I was not going to miss out on something that was that important to Kristen, because I love Kristen.
God, I need an answer. I'm tired. I'm so tired of living this back and forth. I need you to show up. I need you to be so clear on what you have for me. I don't get this. I don't understand this, but I don't feel settled. I need you to show up, and I need it to be in my face. I don't need a feeling or a sense or even a little scripture. I need it in my face. And I was driving home to my place in Oak Creek, and I walked in on my fiance with another woman. And it was like it hit me. Even in the midst of the sadness and the anxiety, it was like suddenly peace came with it. It was the weirdest thing. And a friend of mine who I had known since high school, his name was Zach, and him and I would just meet random. It was maybe a couple times a year, maybe 3 times a year, for coffee, lunch, whatever. And with Zach, there was always something that was comforting about him, and I couldn't explain it. We got each other. When we'd hang out, it was easy.
So I began to pray for him. It ended up being 6 years of praying. And I remember he lived in a condo that was right on the road to my mom's nursing home. But I'd pass that, I'd drive past his condos, and every time I made that curve to my mom's, I would pray for Zach.
What I think is so beautiful about God, he knows us so personally that he knows exactly what we need. But God, I think, knew for me, I needed a man that I already knew, that I had already formed a foundation of friendship with, then trust and safety. And so last July of 2018, we were married.
Go to war for your kids. Don't stop praying for them. Go after them with the vengeance that you love that child. Keep praying. Keep going after it. Keep praying and reading the Word of God. He's going to be there for you, and He sustains. That's what I can say in this whole journey. He sustained my husband and I. He gave us strength and peace along the journey all the way. I don't know. I mean, if you had told me it had been 14 years of praying before Kristen would rededicate her life to Christ, I don't know that I could have made that. But God only lets us see just a little bit ahead of us at a time, and He keeps reminding us that He's right there.
We've supported a couple families in our life group that have been involved in the foster care process. The first one was several years ago. There was a family in our life group that had fostered a young girl, and they just needed some help watching her. They were trying to travel, so that's something that was a need that they had. It was relatively easy to do. We just had to be able to open up a bedroom for her, and that's what we did.
So when we first started thinking about foster care or adoption or things like that, we ran into the problem often of, according to different guidelines and stuff, our house is too small, and so we really looked for ways that we could support our friends who wanted to make a difference. And it was such an easy thing for us to do, to step out and support them with babysitting here and there, to give them a break, or when they're traveling, not to have to worry about, well, where are the boys gonna go? Can we even go? You know, can we take vacations? Can we do this business trip? It was easy for us just to step out and say, hey, we can watch them for a couple nights, or help when at nights and you know, pick them from school. It was such an easy thing, I think, for us just to step out and say, we can do that.
We have 4 children of our own, and we know how important it is to raise our own families and our own kids in a way that honors God. And the need for foster parents is so huge. There's so many kids who don't have anybody pouring into their life. And so that's something simple that we can do as a church family. The need is just so great. I forget how many hundreds of kids there are just in our county that need adults that will love them, care them, and give them a safe place. It just seems ridiculous not to be part of that solution.
I think it was back in my old church. Our pastor challenged us one time to give financially. So we gave a little bit, and you know, your first instinct is to give a little bit because you're like, oh, let's just try this and see what happens. And immediately we had things happen in our lives that were indications of that. This can only be God. It's a struggle because I think He challenges us to do it. It's not always going to happen right away, but in the long run, He's gonna show up, and He's gonna make Himself known that He doesn't need your money, but He's gonna take care of you. And so there was a time financially where we were kind of called out to give a certain amount. You know, Lord puts amounts on people's hearts, and financially it really wasn't in our means of doing that. And so that's where the whole faith thing comes in, where you want to give with what He's put in your heart, even though you know financially that this isn't really, I want to say ethical, but it's not really the correct thing to do in our mindset. But He puts it on your heart so strong that you have to follow through with it, because if you don't, you're sick inside. So we gave a certain amount. The first week was tough, and you always got the enemy pushing at you, going, "Why did you do that? Why is this? I can't believe you just did that. You could have done da." And then the next following week, things come in out of nowhere. Either bills were being paid, or your grocery bill is like astronomically cheaper than what it normally is. It's not always that you're going to give the amount and that amount's coming back to you. It's just things around you start, life starts becoming a little easier around you that makes up that difference. So then after a while you start realizing that it's not really, the amount's not the issue. It's just knowing that He's going to provide for what you need because He knows your heart's desire. It's going to be a battle within your heart, but I guarantee it, if you go through with it, the outcome of it's going to be so in your face that you're not going to want to not withhold that again. But it doesn't mean it's not going to be easy, because, you know, He talks about the things we do are not going to be easy, but He'll pull us through it. And when you're fully devoted to giving yourself to the Lord with that time, it's amazing what happens.
I really realized it in college. That's when it hit me the most. And so that's when I stopped believing in God, and I didn't have any faith at all. I questioned everything. My dad, he has multiple sclerosis, and so that was really hard on our family, and I think that's the source of my depression, is truly just not feeling like I had a father, I guess. I have a father, obviously, and I love him more than anything, but I didn't feel like I had a good relationship with him at all. I grew up not really hearing the words like, I'm proud of you. And it's not that he wasn't, it's just his personality. He just didn't, he wasn't one to say it. He wasn't one to go out of his way and say it. And because of my dad's MS and his depression, he often would tell me, like growing up, how much he wished he wasn't alive. So that was always hard. There was one point in November where I had like this mental breakdown, and I was at school and I got upset over something unbelievably ridiculous, and I was gonna start crying and I didn't know what to do, and I just had to leave, and I ended up going to one of my favorite places in Racine, which is where I'm from. I was looking over the lake and I just started thinking, and I can't see God, but I know he's there. And I just, like, it just hit me in that moment when I was thinking about that specifically. And so I sat there for about an hour, and that was when I gave my life to God. And from that point on, I continued going to young adults every Thursday, and I started going to church service in January. And if it wasn't for my friend Caleb inviting me just one random day, I would have never fell in love with God. I would have never had that faith, or at least not now. I am forever grateful, because I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be going to Lithuania. And I feel like a lot of my depression has subsided. And it's easier to go through life with God on your side.